Hello, world. Welcome to the conversation with the women of BSV. We are delighted today to have as our guest Alex Hayes. He is the co-founder and chief executive of Orion and Taurus. You can follow their business and read their blog and make an appointment for a consultation at orionandtaurus.io. Alex, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Lovely to meet you, Alex. I was just scrolling through your LinkedIn, and one of the things I didn't realize about you is that you started out in the... Now, were you ever actually a Marine, or did you just train for the Merchant Navy in America?
So I started, I went to school at the Merchant Marine Academy up in New York on Long Island, and they trained us as naval officers. So I graduated with a commission in the Navy Reserve and went to sea for 12 years, followed and rose to the rank of master. And that's where I decided to retire.
Fabulous. I don't honestly know what that entails as a job. I mean, do you just spend most of your life at sea in that case?
That's what I was finding I was doing, yes. Most of my time was spent on the water on actually oil tanking company. Well, bigger, 650-foot oil tankers.
Wow. And I recently watched a documentary about Walt Whitman, and it seems that he founded the newspaper there in Long Island. Have you ever read the local paper before?
No, we didn't. We weren't allowed to have any contact for a while there at school, and for a whole year of our education out of the 4 was spent actually at sea as a cadet sailing around the world. So we didn't spend much time reading newspapers, unfortunately. Probably should have. Probably would have done better.
You were there in Long Island, is that right? And you're still there?
No. That was many years ago now for me, but I live down here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Cool. How did you combat the seasickness?
Seasickness? Oh no,
I didn't. Could not get on a boat and go out in the ocean without getting that. Oh, it makes me so nauseous. I tried to do deep sea fishing and I was like on the floor.
Well, smaller boats is actually easier to get sick. So the big boats, they're fairly steady most of the time, and I'm 3rd generation sailor, so I've got my dad liked to tell me I had sea in my blood, some salt in the blood. So maybe I never really got sick all that much.
Wow, cool. And I remember meeting you there in Miami at the Bitcade event. That was excellent.
Yeah, that was a great event. We were happy to see a nice turnout, and always happy to see fellow Bitcoiners.
Right. And there you're in Fort Lauderdale, so you're still close to the sea. And you had mentioned that it was actually your father that had introduced you to the concept of Bitcoin. So tell us about that. How did you get involved in?
Well, sure. So when I decided to stop sailing, there was, it was basically towards the beginning of the COVID crisis, and international shipping kind of had almost ground to a halt. It was very difficult to get in and out of port. I didn't really like the idea of going back out to sea and not knowing if I was ever going to get back home again. Mm-hmm. So that was the time I was like, okay, I think we're ready for a transition now. And we started looking around and trying to see what else was there, what was next. And we knew from some basic reading that we wanted to start a business, as that's the best way to grow your wealth, is to have a business and to grow it and be an entrepreneur. So we did a lot of investigating. We settled on, we tried to go into real estate, but real estate was a little too far out of our price range down in South Florida because prices had already started to skyrocket. So then we found, my father casually makes this comment to me. He says, "Son, why don't you look into this Bitcoin thing?" And of course, he was just trying to suggest it as an investment asset, not as a career path. But that's kind of what it ended up being. The more we dived into the mining economics and just the simplicity of it was you buy a computer, you plug it into the wall, and it gives you a return. And as long as you're not, as long as it's giving you more in return than the power you're consuming, it's a profitable business. And that was that at the time. That was as far as my financial education had was progressed, and so that's kind of made sense. I was like, all right, well, let's give this a go. So we started off as a test pilot project. We built a 6x6 data center actually in my home, and that's where we got started. Was doing home mining with 11 tons of air conditioning in a 6x6 closet. So it was quite an educational experience with heat, electricity, and soundproofing, and then node operations and everything else that followed. But the building aspect of it has really got me excited because I really like to build things. That's I think it's incredibly rewarding to see the fruits of your labor and like, yeah, that's a good system. That's gonna make it. That's something that's built to last. That's not a band-aid. That's done on purpose, and that's what I like.
I got about as far as plugging in an ASIC, and I soundproofed it in a cooler, and got the right electricity outlet installed and everything, and then it was still too loud in my basement, and I was like, I just don't want to. It was like living next to a highway sound or something coming up from the floor. I was like, okay, let me just go get involved in Gorilla Pool or something, because this is too much noise at my house.
Yeah, understood.
Right. And what is that? I've heard of it. GorillaPool.io.
Yeah, that's the Kurt. I'm sure you know a lot more about it than I do, Alex. What they're working on with the crowdfunded mining operation that Kurt and the Gorilla Pool are handling. Are you involved in that in any way?
Yeah, we're one of his oldest miners on the pool, because as soon as we found out about Gorilla Pool, and that's kind of around the same time we found out about BSV, and we made that decision. Like, yeah, we like this community, we like the project, we like what the BSV is about, scalability, blockchain with use case. That really hit a lot of chords with us, and we're like, yes, we want to support this project. So we moved all of our Bitcoin hash onto Gorilla Pool. Nice. from kind of its inception stage. So I don't know if we're the longest pool member or oldest pool member, but we're pretty close.
Awesome. Yeah, that's one of the next things I wanted to invest in. Just haven't gotten there yet. So I wasn't impressed with the home mining experience at all. So kudos for building something amazing off of playing with that. Because if you know how to expand it, it's amazing to do it at home. But
yeah, when we had a garage set up, we were mining. At one point we had almost 50 GPUs running here at the house. Wow. And we had a whole bunch of them in the garage, and that garage was so hot. Now it ran for a few months, and I eventually said, I think we can't do this anymore. This is just ridiculous.
Can you explain to us? Because I've always wanted to ask somebody, Alex, what is the sort of fundamental difference between a GPU and an ASIC?
It's the type of chip. It's the processing power of the chip that makes the difference. The ASIC is application specific, so they can only do one thing. With the GPU, you can program it to do a few different things, and some of the different types of GPUs are better at certain algorithms than others. But that's simplistically, that's what it is. ASICs are very, very dumb. They can only do one thing. That's it. You can't repurpose it. So that's why they're the cheapest chip that you can buy typically, but they're also only designed to do one thing. So you're very, very restricted in what it can do.
Oh, right. Okay. But then they can do the calculations faster or cooler, yeah, or
because it eliminates all the other stuff,
extraneous stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. All the other processing powers and all this stuff. It's only focused on doing one thing. So that's why it's the most efficient way of doing it, because that's the only thing it's doing.
It's not how easy are you finding it to source ASICs and GPUs these days? Because presumably there's a lot of supply chain issues, or is it eased a bit over the last few years? I know for a while they were difficult to get a hold of, right?
They're difficult to get a hold of if you're not plugged into the right channels. It took me a while. It really took me about 6 months in my journey to really start to get a network going. And I mean, now I have all kinds of networks, so I can get them very quick, very quickly, at probably a little better price point than what you're going to find anywhere else. But that's only because I know I've known people now. I've built relationships. So yeah, my supply chains are very good. But starting off as an individual trying to do this, it's very, very tough.
No, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. I used to use Genesis mining myself years ago, but I've let that lapse a long time ago. But yeah, certainly outsourcing it to another company made a lot of sense to me. Like Casey was saying about the whole sound and heat, and being able to source cheap electricity is a big part of the problem. Well, how do you source your electricity?
Unfortunately, I got sucked into the Bit Club mining scam. I don't know, Alex, did you hear about that one? Where they had a crowdfunded mine in Iceland, supposedly using geothermal energy and all this stuff. It was like $770 million scam run in the BTC space.
Oh shit!
Wow.
Like me, that were buying mining shares and like actually buying equipment and having it run in this mining farm in Iceland. Yeah, that was Joby Weeks and some of the other people that, like, it was an MLM basically in the Bitcoin space that you get in, you buy your shares, and then you give your referral link out to everybody, and everybody got scammed. I was like, oh my gosh. That was one of my first tastes of the Bitcoin space, though, was getting involved in Bitcoin mining.
Yeah.
Wanted to mine for a long time. It's just really hard as an individual to get started unless you do it in a group like what Gorilla Pool is doing. So,
well, it's a group that you trust. So there's, unfortunately, the greater crypto community outside of BSV has a very negative stigmatism with it as being a bunch of scammers and stuff. And there's a reason for it, is because there are a lot of scammers in this crypto universe. So knowing who to trust and who's going to do things the right way plays a big part of that. And that's where I think that I've gained a lot of wisdom, a lot of insight. I mean, I've been scammed on when I first started buying equipment. I sent Litecoin to somebody probably over in Poland, and never got my miners from it. So that was my education.
Steep learning curve, yeah.
Yeah, steep learning curve. It fortunately only cost me a few $1,000s, but I learned a very valuable lesson. Knowing who to trust is very, very important. So yeah, same thing with your infrastructure. If your infrastructure partner is very, very important as well. So you asked where I source my power from. Right now, I'm currently using a friend of mine that I developed a relationship with early in my mining days. He's up in Maryland right now. So most of my equipment is up in Maryland hashing away. But we've developed other relationships with other partners, in Texas, and I come across all kinds of power deals, not every day, but fairly regularly enough, with a bunch of opportunity. So it's just a matter of trying to put together the right deals.
So it is like a seriously full-time job, though, isn't it? Trying to get the equipment at the right price, get the electricity at the right price, and keep it all running. Presumably that's like a really complex thing to pull off, right?
Well, that is a full-time job. Right now, we're working on a particular project to seeing how we can build another data center here in the U.S. and seeing where the economics make sense. And I've partnered with some good people on this project. It's still in its infancy stage, so I can't really say too much about it. But we're working on some fairly sizable projects and deals that we're hoping are going to turn into some really, really awesome building projects.
Nice.
Fantastic.
And you bring the word distributed to mind, because you have the distributed mining network, I believe. Is that true? You have mining here, there, and everywhere?
Well, selective. It's distributed. I think distributed is probably the right word for it. Definitely, I wouldn't say decentralized, because I think it's a term that's not used correctly in our sphere of influence. But distributed is probably much better.
Yes, and another word you mentioned was trusted, and I was laughing because it's ironic but we have the design of Bitcoin, which enables us to not need trust, right? But then with people, trust is always required. So it's kind of ironic that no matter what, people to people, we do need trust and to establish trust.
Well, absolutely. It's any type of human system requires governance, and governance is the issue, right? Because how do you govern rightly, and how do you govern fairly? And everybody's got a different opinion of what that looks like. But it's knowing who you're partnered with and who's supporting you in infrastructure is very, very important. Another lesson I learned in infrastructure is I used to use a co-location facility. I'm not going to say who they are, but it was over in Colorado. Everything was going fine for a while. We got payouts. They did a great job. And then one day we got an email that says you're being basically evicted and they're kicking out our miners. And, try to figure out what's going on. And basically what ends up happening is if you don't own the infrastructure, or if you don't know your infrastructure partner well enough, you run a very high risk of getting kicked out once the economics are figured out on the other side, depending on who this other player is, who's the owner of the infrastructure. And they're the ones that have the power. They're the ones that control literally the power, but have the power to make the decisions to do it themselves, or to bring in another party that's going to pay them more money. But you're kind of at their mercy. So that's why another reason why I like to build is because I like to be the one that has that level of protection. I want to make sure that our infrastructure is protected. We're not going to build something on somebody else's that's controlled by somebody else. I want to make sure what we build, we have the control over it, at least as much as we can.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like that right now. I'm rent a house and I want to start a greenhouse and a garden and all this stuff. And it's like, why would I do this on somebody else's land?
Yep.
Yeah, no, I feel you there. So I love that. I like being in that position myself. I think that's extremely important for sustainability, especially when you're trying to set something up for future generations and that kind of thing. So
you had, what really impressed me about your website was that you're recycling. So Casey mentioned that keyword sustainability, but tell us, how can people recycle the hardware that they do have already? And
so there's a lot of guys that have been doing this for a while, and they've got S9s lying around, and they're broken and they're not really worth fixing. I mean, we could fix it too if you want to send it to us. We can try to fix miners, but the older units, the economics don't make sense a lot of times for the cost of repair, for what they're making. So, we try to offer a solution where people can send us their miners, and we can deconstruct them and recycle the press circuit boards in a responsible manner. I've looked into several options for make sure that we can do it the right way, but it's just another level of service. And then if the chips can be reused, we can try to find the right people to send those chips to, and so that those materials could get recycled. So that was the intent for trying to market a recycling service. It wasn't really a profitable issue. It was more of just seeing how we can create more value in our space and try to differentiate ourselves.
So let me ask you this, Alex. Are your machines merely hashing, or are they actually writing to the ledger as well? I mean, what side of this are you doing? Are you just doing the hashing machines, or the ultimate servers that write to the blockchain? Do you do both? Are they the same thing?
So that's without getting entirely too technical, we're running the ASICs that we're talking about are the processors. They're the data processors moving the data. Then you have the ledgers, right, on the nodes. I think the Bitcoin white paper actually uses that term node interchangeably between the processor and the ledger. So that's why it's a little, fundamentally they are different, but the language is similar in how they're described. But we are supporting Gorilla Pool in enterprise server solution to help them with endpoint node operations and things like that. So we're starting to branch into that side of things a lot more. We've been running a listening node, which unfortunately doesn't really do very much, but we have been running a full listening node with with good hardware at our data center here in Fort Lauderdale, and we're going to be moving that, and Gorilla Pool is going to be taking control of that and using it for probably better purposes. And we're going to move that to a truly enterprise solution in a data center in Miami.
Does that just pick out specific transactions for a company or something? What's a listening node do? What's the difference?
Yeah, well, listening node is passive, but the Gorilla Pool is actually going to use it as an endpoint for clients. So unfortunately, that's something that I'm not an expert in, so I can't. I really wouldn't want to say too much of something that I'm not that familiar with. But I do know that they're going to be able to make it dance really well, and it's going to be able to provide better services for the Gorilla Pool clients. So we're excited.
Sound of it, it sounds a bit like it's for individual companies to be able to find their own transactions, so that they're not.
I believe that's part of it.
Yeah.
But they have the Gorilla Pool team has a lot of plans that they want to be able to use the hardware for. So we're excited to be helping them in that avenue.
Because I would imagine, like, companies like Crypto Fights or whatever, they need to be able to sort the noise out from the signal. If you see what I mean? Because that's the thing about BSV having all these apps running on it. It's not just your regular digital cash transaction. It's all sorts of things, isn't it? And data handling and stuff. So presumably there's going to be all sorts of specialized services have to spring up to service the needs of all these data applications. It's going to get really complex, presumably.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we're excited to see how the hardware that we're going to be providing is going to be able to help them service their clients in a much more efficient manner. So we're excited. Can't wait to see what happens next.
So can I ask, I heard Kurt talking about that opportunity for the, retail investor here on a Spaces not too long ago, but obviously didn't get to go very deep with him. Do you mind sharing from your perspective what the opportunity is getting involved in the Gorilla Pool for someone like myself that's been trying to mine for a long time and just hasn't really figured out how to get it, with a return on investment here? What does that look like in the Gorilla Pool right now from your perspective?
So the Gorilla Pool offers a much needed service in our BSV industry, and that's because they're creating more competition in the mining space, because the node or the pool operators, if you want to talk just the BTC world, the major 7 or 8 node operators have the control, and those are pretty much the mining pools, right? So they have more sway than people realize.
And what are some of their names, Alex, for our audience?
Some of their names? I mean, the big pools, Pool In, Slush Pool, Marathon has their own pool. I'm sure Wright has their own pool. I mean, these guys, they have, because they're running the node and they're collecting all the hash, they're very, very powerful on the network, right? And so in the BSV world, statistically, of all the ASICs that are capable of running SHA-256, BSV has less than 1% of all of the ASICs that are produced on the BSV blockchain that are hashing on BSV. So we're not talking about a lot of power, hash power on our BSV network. That's a problem. We need to get better. We need to get more. But Tall is starting to get back into the hash power war game here, and they're building out, and we're happy to see them build out infrastructure. But Tall needs competition. They need competition to keep the mining economics in play. It's the one that does it the best that gets the reward, and then that means you need hash power. So we're excited that or we're happy to see that Kurt is filling a need in our industry, which is lack of competition on the BSV blockchain for hash power. And the opportunity is the more that we can get on Gorilla Pool, the stronger Gorilla Pool gets, the more reward you can get. And that in turn makes Tall compete even better, because now they're getting better, and because when Tall gets better, Gorilla Pool's got to get better. That means that everybody's trying to get better. It's not getting stagnant. Everything's trying to get better at the same time. Because
Craig call it the Red Queen game.
Yeah, but it's kind of like we're all frenemies, right? Everybody's competing for the same block, and everybody's working hard. We're spending money, but by doing so, we're making BSV better as a whole.
Yes.
And so that's that's the whole point, is to make the network more secure, but also make it more efficient.
Keeping everybody on their toes. So, like Casey said, I remember her getting involved a couple months ago. So if we were to put up with the noise in our basement, would it be helpful, or has that ship sailed already?
I mean, it's entirely a personal decision, really. How much effort are you willing to put into it to do something at the house, and can you do something? Is it economical? If you're paying 12 cents up to 18 cents a kilowatt for power, then yeah, you're not really going to be making very much. I mean, if you want to reach out to me, I could put you in touch with a couple of co-location partners that I know personally, and that can help get you going. So I mean, Kurt I know probably has a couple of contacts that he knows. So there's options out there if you want to get going in the co-location space. The issue is always going to be what's your reward and what's your buy-in. Right.
So, that was the thing I was going to say, is he was saying something like a $10,000 minimum investment, but like, what is the return on that longer term? Like, why would someone want to do that? What is the potential of earnings in return for a $10,000 investment at this time, with all that stuff?
I think at the moment, honestly, Casey, you'd be better off buying the coin outright.
Yeah.
Because the price is so low.
Well, that may or may not be true. It depends. A lot of it is it depends. The best, if you can get a cheap source of power, right? If you can get a better source of power, and you're in a competitive district where the power costs are below 8 cents, which there a lot of places in Texas are. I don't know where exactly you are, but if you could still get good decent rates on power in a lot of the country, and there it may make sense to do it. And when you do it at home, you have, like I said, you have the power because you're the one in charge, and nobody's going to kick you out. And you know that you can try to shop for a competitive rate, a much more competitive rate on the cost of the miner. So you have a lot of control that you gain from doing it in your house. The limiting factors are you can only buy so many because your house only has so much power, and how much money are you willing to put into it. So the online calculators are okay. They only really, what we found is they only really take into account the block subsidy and not transaction fees. So BSV, this is kind of one of those things where you kind of have to look into the future. All right, do we really believe BSV is going to win? Is BSV going to take a large chunk of the market share? Are they going to become a data processor and not just a speculative asset? So you kind of have to, in some aspects, you do have to take a leap of faith. Like, yeah, this is gonna be a long-term investment. Now, there's ways too that you can do it smartly. If you set up a corporation and you set up a business in your name and just then you can take a write-off on the equipment right now, quick depreciation schedule. You can save on some taxes, as well as making it a passive income stream, as long as your power rates are still attractive. But you got to take into account projections. All right, how low can BSV go? Where's my break-even point? Where do I got to shut this thing off? So there's a few different factors that you kind of have to keep on top of if you're going to do it at home. But is it possible to make money? Sure, absolutely. You can do it. You can structure it the right way to make some income on a truly passive basis.
all I want is passive income. It's like the goal in life.
That's what we all want.
Right?
Yeah, some money that we don't have to work for. I love it.
Right. Yeah, sign me up.
Also, along that note, what about the efficiency? We often will criticize those on Ethereum and say, you can't run the world's data on a Raspberry Pi, dudes. So what is the difference between what that concept is of being, you know, a miner with a Raspberry Pi versus what you're discussing, making a major competitive investment as a retail investor into mining as a retail miner?
So it's just a totally different architecture, I think. For one, so I mean, to be perfectly honest, we when we first got into the game, we did have we staked Ethereum. You know, we run our own full Ethereum 2.0 node. Again, that was very early in our blockchain experiences, and maybe we could say we didn't know any better. But you know, do we have stuff in other coins? Yeah, we have stuff in other coins. We try to be open-minded to projects, but we get really excited about BSV and what it can do, and that's why most of our efforts are focused and funneled here, right? But as far as how efficient it is, Ethereum is a mess, for sure. I mean, they're an absolute mess. I see it. We're already seeing all kinds of, you know, the Twitter space, the crypto Twitter space, from people that have like .eth in their name saying, I'm looking for a blockchain that can scale. I'm like, what is going on right now? Yeah,
where's my bell?
Yeah, I'm like, holy smokes! People are actually starting to realize that Ethereum doesn't work very well.
I think they've been threatening to move from proof of work to proof of stake for about 6-7 years. I don't know, like it's a long time now, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's been a few years. Yeah,
like at least 5.
And they keep delaying it, but the developers on Ethereum really want to do away with proof of work. They've said this multiple times. You know, our guys here have been listening to the dev talks and stuff like that, because again, we do keep up an ETH 2.0 node, kind of because we have to at this point. Otherwise we lose that investment. But you know, we're listening to the devs, and they're very anti proof of work. You know, they're anti the guys that are mining. They really don't like the community of miners, which is kind of funny because that's the only thing keeping them going right now and making them money is the fact that they have miners on the network. So they really have made it clear that they want to get away from that, and they're moving to proof of stake come hell or high water. And you know, will the grand experiment work at some level at proof of stake? Who knows?
I imagine
they'll
probably have to switch it off and on again about once a week, like Solana does. What do you think?
Yeah, right. We'll see. I mean, can these guys figure something out that works on some level? Maybe. I mean, these guys are really smart too. I mean, I'm a big fan of Craig Wright, and like I said, most of our efforts are dedicated towards building out the BSV space. But we're also looking at it like there are other really smart people in this world. Not just, you know, Craig is one of them, but can somebody else come up with something that works? Maybe. I don't know.
I have a question from something I've heard Ryan say about Merkle proofs and how the miners on BSV right now are not delivering the Merkle proofs like they should be. Do you understand that? And can you explain and elaborate on that a little bit?
I wouldn't be the right person to.
Okay.
Yeah, not me personally.
I know Craig supposedly asked Ryan to build a miner that delivers the Merkle proofs.
Yeah.
So that's on our roadmap, you know, obviously down the road.
Presumably, Casey, that's so that proper SPV works. Yeah. Okay. So that you can have wallets that can judge whether it's a valid transaction before it leaves the wallet.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you can send your money to the next person, and then they send it off to the ledger.
Okay.
Afterwards. So it makes the whole transaction truly peer-to-peer, as opposed to the way BTC works at the minute, where it's going via the miner and back to the other person. So it's not really a peer-to-peer network anymore. But yeah, you have to presumably have the Merkle headers stored in your kind of light wallet. in order that you can figure out whether the transaction is valid. But you only need the headers that relate to your own transactions, your own, yeah.
Okay.
As a user.
As a user.
Right? As a user, right. And then the miners, they
need the whole thing.
Everything.
Right? Yeah, but I think that's the idea of it.
Just curious, I've just heard that a few times in conversations and whatnot, and I didn't fully understand how it works from a mining technically perspective. So
hardly anybody does, I think. But you know,
yeah, there's some really smart people working on this stuff. A lot of my research these days, being on this side of thing, is about how to manage business, how to raise capital, how to speak to investors. I'm doing a lot of research into that space right now, so that we can be positioned to build the massive data centers that are required to make all this stuff happen. So we're there. BSV has a great community of developers. We love the people that are working in this space, and we want to be able to support them. Because that's the reason why we like the hardware side of things so much. For me personally, is because there's not a lot of people talking about it, in the BSV community, and so that's one thing. All right, well, what are people not doing that we can help with? I'm not somebody that's going to sit there and code, but I am somebody that likes to build. So I want to, that can be my contribution, and that's what I'm hoping what we can achieve.
Nice. Well, we are very happy you're here and to learn from you and see everything that you guys are building. I mean, I think it's amazing to be building out the hash power of BSV. Obviously, I've heard a lot about, how we need to up that. So thank you for contributing to that.
Can I ask you one last thing, Alex, before we go? It's just another one of these things. I see in your LinkedIn page, you one of the things that you sort of mention in your heading is immersion crypto mining. Just explain that to me. Is that like actually putting the machines either underwater or under oil or something? How does that work?
Sure. It's a dielectric fluid right now, and so it's not water that people are dunking the machines in, but it's basically the fluid medium is what takes the heat away from the chips, right? Because these things are putting out massive amounts of heat. So you have to. That's why that's why your miner in your basement was so loud, is because they've got these high-powered fans that are blowing and sucking air at the same time through the miner to make it go fast. And so the fluid that's taking the heat is actually air. The air is the medium exchange. And when you put it in the fluid, you have a much more efficient exchange of heat, or to take the heat away from the chips. So that's what it's doing. So you're taking it to a heat exchanger, or you're taking that fluid and bringing it directly to the dry cooler outside, which is then blowing the heat off and then taking that cooler fluid back and recycling.
So explain, all right, this is probably too esoteric, but explain to me what dielectric fluid means, because you'd think electricity and any kind of fluid is not a great mixture. So how does it not destroy everything? How does it?
Dielectric by definition is non-conductive.
Okay.
That's what it basically is. What it means is a non-conductive fluid.
Okay.
Oh, yes, I've seen that. Thinking about it on like a video I've watched where the person doesn't get electrocuted when they put their hand in the water because it is a dielectric fluid.
Exactly.
I see.
And it's really cool stuff. I mean, because it used to be toxic and difficult to handle, but a lot of all this new generation of stuff that's coming out is all biodegradable, non-toxic. I mean, there's a lot of, again, this is another whole aspect of the traditional data center world that's moving into crypto, and it's really cool stuff to be part of, and to see how this stuff is being built, and the engineering and the science behind everything. Again, I'm not a scientist, but I can really appreciate what's going on here.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. That's why I asked, because it is kind of fascinating, isn't it?
Where did your love of building come from? Were you a kid with all the Legos?
I was not. I was I was really quiet. I was the quiet guy. I was the wallflower growing up. But I think my fondness for building came from Merchant Marine, where I sailed for many years as the chief officer, and I was responsible for building out my self-sustaining ecosystem. And because we didn't have anybody else to rely on, so I was in charge of ordering spare parts. I had a crew that worked under me, and we kept up all the equipment, and we just doing the right job the first time, and seeing the works of your labors that you did made an impact on the operation as a whole. And it was very rewarding to see when you did a good job, everything worked, right? You had problems always come up, but it's how do you address those problems so that they don't come back? And I really got hooked on building and designing and thinking about systems as a whole, and how to make it as efficient as how to make it as efficient as possible, keeping in mind people's safety with economics and efficiency. So that's where it all came from.
Nice. Life preparing you for your passion.
Yes, that's beautiful. And how about innovations in the space? Like you mentioned is it diametric fluid, and how it's no longer toxic like it used to be? Do you see that the mining infrastructure is leading the way in innovating new energy sources or new technologies in other related industries?
Well, I was on a call today listening to a group of very smart individuals about how to reuse the waste heat. So there's going to be a lot of applications that are going to come out here.
Incinerators?
Not necessarily incinerators, but using the excess heat coming off of these miners and moving it into grow houses, so you can have so you can have greenhouses all year round, no matter what the climate is, or being able to provide the heating for an entire city like New York City. Everybody's got central heating. How about we replace the boilers with ASIC miners, right?
Wow.
And all of a sudden now we're using the electricity that creates heat, but now we're using it for dual purpose. You're mining Bitcoin, but you're also getting heat that you're not having to pay for. So that's how that's really where the industry is going to be headed. For people that have a smart eye for the future, that's where things are going, and that's where I'm going. When we build our data centers, we want to build them for multiple purposes and have that in mind from the beginning.
No, that's a really good point, Alex, because in the UK, they're trying to push for us to change from our regular boilers, because England's a very cold place most of the time, and they're trying to get us to switch from our regular boilers to these underground piping systems, which by the sound of it are expensive to fit, because you're retrofitting, probably digging up the ground, and they don't really provide enough heat either. If each one had like an ASIC strapped to the end of it, then maybe it's a go, but it's a thought, isn't it? Like, you've got to think creatively about these problems.
And
absolutely,
a challenge is an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen guys that have set up some very clever landlords at apartment complexes, where instead of they took out their boiler and they have a whole rack full of ASICs, and that's where they get their heating that goes through the whole house, or through the whole building, whole structure is all hot air pumped from the miners. But they've re-engineered their HVAC systems to shut off the AC, and now we've got heating, and they're not paying for it because it's paying for itself. So I've seen, like, this stuff is happening. This stuff is already happening, but doing it at a mechanical level that makes sense and on purpose with safety standards, I think, is the next evolution, right? So everybody can try to do things that work, but eventually somebody's going to make the wrong step or cut a corner. Somebody's going to burn down their house, right? We can't have people burning down their houses. We got to have some sort of standards for to make sure people are doing the right things if they're going to try to do something like this. So that's where regulation helps people, not hurts people. Problem is, there's a negative connotation with regulation. Not all regulation is bad. Too much regulation and regulation that restricts people's innovation is bad. But but the regulation that actually is there to save lives, that makes sense. And we should embrace that kind of regulation.
Yes, I agree with that.
I think it's worth mentioning, seeing as we're having this conversation as well, that with BTC, they're throwing an awful lot of hash power at very few transactions. And of course, in BSV, it's the opposite. We're throwing small amounts of hash power at lots of transactions per block. And is that something that, you know, appeals to you and has sort of brought you towards BSV, Alex?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. That's what brought us here. And that's why, as an entrepreneur, I'm really excited, because there's still a lot of opportunity in BSV. Mm-hmm. You know, you can, if you add 20 ASICs onto the BTC network, you're going to do okay, but you know, you're very, very limited, and it's all speculation. There's nothing that's backing it up with actual value creation. There's no value created. It's just value absorption. So BSV has the ability to actually create value with data processing, and that's why I like it personally a lot better. Mm-hmm. Now, I think to be honest, though, I have to say that, can BTC succeed in its narrative of being a store of value? I don't have a crystal ball. Like, it could, theoretically it could. I mean, there's nothing that says it can't. Is it likely? Probably not, in my opinion. But again, that's just my opinion.
When the block reward runs out, what do you think will happen then with BTC?
Well, when I mean, they're going to have to change. I think the BTC community will change one way or another, and its change will come at a high cost. So I don't know. Honestly, I don't think that they have. It's on the current path and the current narrative. They're not gonna make it. So I see that they're gonna end up making some fundamental changes, like they've done in the past, to allow certain things that they probably wouldn't have allowed early on. But
and by forcing all of their transactions onto the Lightning Network, assuming that ever works properly, you know, they're really making life harder for the miners there as well, aren't they? Because what transactions there are being moved off of the layer one.
Well, it's the same. Like, everything is kind of similar to Ethereum, right? The Ethereum network is terrible. So what do? They gotta create layer 2s and layer 3s, layer 4s, whatever, to make it work. Mm-hmm. Again, my thing is I don't have a crystal ball, and I know there's a lot of smart people out there, and there's a lot of people that are very well connected with a lot of money, and money sometimes can solve a lot of problems. Now, will they succeed in the end? I don't know, but how long can they keep going before things collapse? That's another question too. They can go for a long time limping along the way they're limping, you know, until somebody pulls the rug out from underneath them.
Money certainly seems to cover a lot of problems, that's for sure.
It does. It does. So again, I try to stay out of the debate of, is BTC bad or good? Like, that's not what I'm here to do. And that's not, you know, it's only an opinion, and opinions are not worth very much. So does it have value? Does it make people money right now? Yes, it makes people money. You can mine BTC, you can make money. Absolutely. So is it the money that I want to be making? Is it the system I want to be a part of personally? Not really, because I don't see the value being created. But that's another one of my opinions. That's why I'm glad to be part of this community, because we're trying to create value.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're really glad to have you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and learn from you too. This is great.
Yeah, so I'm glad everything worked.
Your company name, Orion and Taurus. What inspired you to choose this name?
So Orion and Taurus is a very prominent constellation in the Northern Hemisphere. And being a sailor, stars are close to my heart. We liked the imagery of the hunter and the bull. When we thought about blockchain and crypto and getting into this space early on with a limited education, it seemed like we were being very, very aggressive and going after what we wanted. So the Orion and Taurus seemed to be a natural fit for me. Our company core values are courage, sincerity, wisdom, and integrity. And that's what I think that the hunter and the bull kind of represent, where the courage of the hunter and the wisdom of the hunter and the sincerity and the integrity of the bull. I mean, like these are imageries that really speak to me, and that's why, when we went out down this road, it was a very aggressive play. We went all in, head first down this rabbit hole, and we wanted to have a strong name out in front.
I was just going to say, we've interviewed quite a lot of people in the BSV sort of ecosystem now, and the one thing that I love that they all have in common is that ethics and morality principles are all at the forefront of their minds, and you just don't really see that anywhere else in crypto. So that's another good reason to stick around, I think. Go on, Casey.
Well, yeah, no, it's obvious. You can kind of sense that within the people in the BSV community, and it's not in the other blockchains that I've experienced at all. So we see you, and we see that in you for sure. So thank you for holding that space for this ecosystem. But my off-topic question was going to be, so how many UFOs have you seen while you're out in the ocean?
Good question.
I've seen so many of those videos where they're like shooting right into the water, and I'm like, oh, that's so crazy. What's going on under the ocean?
So you see a lot of unidentified objects in the air. Yes, you see, but they're just unidentified. They're not mystical, in my opinion. But but we do.
Moving very fast.
Yeah, they're moving really fast. We've seen. I mean,
so
some of the best scenery though in the world is, if you're going to ask me the question of what do I miss the most about sailing, it's got to be the ocean view. I spent so many days just looking out on the water when there's nothing else, seeing amazing sunrises and sunsets. Every one of them is different. The stars in the sky, I mean, you could see thousands of stars, pitch black out there. But I mean, it's just an amazing visual sight to see. That it's just gorgeous.
One of the reasons I asked is because I'm obsessed with, like, sustainable technologies, energy sources, and free energy technology and all this stuff. And I've always been so curious, like, what is the propulsion system that gets these things to and from, like, how are they being powered? And so when I had dinner with Craig Wright, I was asking him about, different free energy technologies that I've looked into, that I've heard about and everything. And he wasn't really like, open to, that conversation. And I was like, well, how do you explain crop circles and all these things if there's no advanced energy technologies that are getting these craft here and whatnot? So anyways, I was just curious if you guys had ever looked into, some of these technologies that I think are just like waiting to be discovered for energy sources here.
So I really get excited about hydrogen. I think there's.
I do.
I know a particular company, founders and entrepreneurs very well, that there's a lot. I'll say there's a lot of really good developments happening in renewables, and price points coming down, and hydrogen, I think is nobody's really talking about it, but there's a different way of hydrogen. Like, this company has solid state hydrogen as opposed to compressed liquid gas. So it's
safer.
Absolutely 100% safer. I mean, there's no explosion risk in solid state.
Well,
But that's just something, I'm really big on the energy too. And that's another whole topic of conversation but I've gone down that hole as well, that rabbit hole, and looked into all kinds of renewable energies, because that plays into the data centers, right? A remote data center.
So for years, I've been trying to get Berlin Energy, which is a company in Silicon Valley at Berkeley, SRI International. The chief technology officer there is Robert Goddess. And I actually had a meeting that I orchestrated between the owners of BitClub Network, that mining farm in Iceland, with Berlin Energy. And they were going to do a deal to run their mining farm off low energy nuclear reaction, which is hot hydrogen tube technology, basically. The Women of BSV did an interview with him, and off air or whatever, I was gonna at least send it to you and potentially put you in touch with Robert, I mean, if you're exploring these technologies, he has a really awesome one. And there's another one within the Thrive movement. I'm just like, these things are just ready and waiting. I don't care which ones, you know, flourish, but I really think it's time to get off fossil fuels, and the renewables obviously can't meet all of our needs to scale the world's energy, you know, stuff. So we've got to start looking at these technologies, and the suppression of them to me seems like the same people that are suppressing the knowledge of BSV are suppressing the free energy technologies and stuff. So when you follow the money all the way to the top, it seems to be the same people that don't want these advancements. So it's like up to us to just say, we don't care if you guys want it or not. We're going to, you know, start implementing these things. They're here, they're ready, and we've got to get them funded. So however that happens with crowdfunding of, you know, ecosystems like ours or what, I'm so ready for this energy revolution just as much as the financial revolution, you know? And Bitcoin is nothing if we don't have energy.
Well, and that, of course, like we've said before, is Casey's soapbox.
No, well, I'm not trying to be on one. I just think it's time, you know, we have all these opportunities.
Yeah, I think that what you've described, I think is changing very, very fast. Like I said, this company that I know, they went from being blacklisted, literally blacklisted by the U.S. government, to all of a sudden the U.S. government was coming to them and saying, how can we use your technology to supplement our power grid because we're vulnerable. So they were once the problem, but now they're the solution. So I think that the I think the narrative is changing. I think that the tide is definitely, the tide has changed, and you're going to be seeing a lot more investment in the renewable space in particular. And the question is always going to come down to economics. It's not going to be is it good or bad? It's going to be is it economically viable? Is the money going into it going to be worth going to be worth the money coming out of it? And if that answer is no, then it's not going to happen. So but again, I think that price point, like you said, that price point is coming down farther and farther. I mean, just look at the price of solar panels. When 20 years ago, they were ridiculous. Now they're fairly reasonable. Now the economics are making sense. And that's why you're seeing a lot of development. All of a sudden, people are building massive solar farms because the price point is there now, finally. So I think that, I think that we're going to see a lot more of that investment. And, you know, that's obviously, absolutely. I would like to talk to everybody about it.
If it's the star's fuel of choice, which it is, it's the obvious way to go, you know. I mean,
on the way down to Miami, we did see lots of solar forests. It was like these huge swaths of land that were just covered with the solar panels. And I learned recently at our BSV Marietta meetup that even the place, my hometown here in Cobb County, Georgia, they do have incentives for those that use the solar power. So there is a big movement. There's a lot of support for solar panels in government or from government and possibly other sources, but definitely from government. And so, it's good to pay attention to. I do think, however, that a lot of the materials in solar panels are toxic. So it's important to really look critically at everything, even something that seems so do-gooder.
Well, and they're deforesting those spots to put those there too. So I mean, that's
here's also another issue is the lack of the rare earths that's required to make all of the renewable energy products. You know, that's another big thing. All those metals are in short supply because of lack of investment in or lack of deposits, mineral deposits on the earth. So there's a huge shortage of all that stuff, and we haven't felt that crunch yet. But you know, if tensions get hotter with China in particular, we're gonna feel that crunch. And so it's not a lack of desire. I think there's a lack of investment because of the price point. Because if we can't get access to those rare earths, then those, because of supply and demand economics, those materials go way up in price because they're more scarce. And that's going to push a lot of investment out because it's not going to be economically viable because you're not going to get the return through the power. So it's going to be interesting to see how the geopolitical stage plays out, of how we, as in the West, maintain good supply chains for the materials that are necessary for all of the development that we're talking about.
They're trusted partners.
Trusted partners. Trusted partners.
With hydrogen, do we need rare earth metals for electrolysis or to split the hydrogen out of water? Or...
No, I can't remember what Robert had said was the...
You talking about solid hydrogen? How is that produced? Do you know? Is it electrolysis or is it some other method?
Yeah, you could produce hydrogen a few different ways. You can actually capture it through natural gas flaring. You can, but the cleanest. So there's different grades of hydrogen. The cleanest hydrogen is called green hydrogen, and that's derived from a renewable energy source like solar panels or wind energy. So the energy, the electricity used to produce the hydrogen, because hydrogen is an element that's everywhere, but it's not found in isolation by itself anywhere. You have to separate the hydrogen from out of the atmosphere or out of the earth. So that process is what has to go through, and that takes electricity. So because there's different electrical sources, you can burn coal, you can burn gas, you can burn all these different things to produce the hydrogen, and they have lesser grades of quality of hydrogen, if I guess you want to call it by the EPA standards. But the cleanest hydrogen is green hydrogen, which is derived from renewable energy sources. So
not from water.
Yeah, from water. I mean, it's a lot from water, but you have to pass it through. Something has to happen to remove the hydrogen. Yeah, take the hydrogen out.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it takes rare earth metals to do it. I'm not entirely sure.
Well, if you do it through solar panels, yes.
Wasn't Robert using nickel to get the hydrogen to?
Yeah, I think he was. Yeah,
nickel.
Is nickel scarce? I don't think it's.
Yeah, actually, some of the bigger. I think it. Somebody should fact check me on this, but I believe some of the largest nickel deposits are over in the Ukraine. Somebody fact check me on that though. I'm not 100% on that one.
Yeah, we can.
Well, I'd certainly rather move towards hydrogen than back to old-fashioned nuclear. Anyway.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, but there, like you're saying, there's like the smaller nuclear reactors are gaining traction as well, as far as being able to produce a lot of power in a very, very small and contained space.
The device that he had was like a smaller than a refrigerator sized device you could have in your basement that powered your whole house with hot hydrogen.
It was hot tubes, wasn't it?
Hot tubes,
yeah.
So, I mean, it seems so viable. It's not getting funded. I don't know why it's being so blocked, but that's only one. Like I said, there's so many different things we could be doing that are so much more sustainable long term. And obviously we need this kind of massive energy consumption to grow this whole ecosystem. So it's time to, figure out what they are and use them.
We're never going to not need power.
And of course, with data is always high energy. So it's really a great opportunity that Bitcoin is here to innovate and to stimulate change in this industry, because the legacy systems are even using much more energy. But because of proof of work and the scalability of Bitcoin, that's really stimulated a lot of innovation into this information age. So it's really exciting.
It's also about having the holistic approach to the system. So Casey's brought up a good point there, that you got to start with the power, then we have the data processing, which is in the middle, but then you got to have another use case, because you don't want to just be a consumer. You want to have a self-sustaining loop that this feeds this, which feeds this, which feeds those people over there. Using you could do aquaponics, and you can have indoor farming, and you can, I mean, there's just all
Help
kinds.
me set that up, Alex, please.
Yeah, there's all kinds. There's all kinds of great applications that we can see. But this is the problem that the mainstream proof of work networks are having, which is they're just looked at as a consumer. You know, we can be a great advocate, say, no, we're not just a consumer. We're actually producers. We're producers that are creating value, but we're also you know, helping self-sustaining ecosystems on microgrids and using renewable energies, or using, you know, or being really efficient with our energy usage because of high transactional volumes, but also because we're helping feeding the masses with our farming that we can do all year round.
Get rich and give back, right?
Yeah, exactly. So there's all kinds. Those are the avenues that we need to be focused on, is how to create more value for society and for our country and for the world. Like, that's where we got to be.
Virtuous circle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we need people like you, Alex, who are holistic thinkers to figure these solutions out, honestly.
Well, I can't claim to be the originator or original thoughts on any of this stuff.
Well,
I mean,
no,
there's plenty of people
you've
that
sort of got an
doing
engineer's
this.
mind, haven't you?
Just a man that's using the word holistic is great.
That's a giant leap forward from
Yeah, you're right on target, and we've really loved learning with you today, Alex.
Yeah.
So for anyone listening that is just piqued their interest to learn more about these holistic systems, please do like and subscribe to the Women of BSV, and look up Alex Hayes at Orion and Taurus.io.
Sure, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes.
Cheers.
Same here. Great to meet you.